Hello, my name is Chandra Hai, and this is my graphic organizer for virtual field trips. Virtual field trips can be accessed via a computer, a tablet, a smartphone, or any device which can connect to the internet. There are a variety of ways to use this resource, and many different types of virtual field trips are available. For the title of my graphic organizer, I chose to use a rectangle shape with the colors blue and white. This represents looking through a window to see outside, and that is what a virtual field trip is. It's like looking through a window into a different place. People are able to experience new places and different cultures without even leaving the room. As we move along, you will see that I kept the window theme throughout my presentation. In order to explore this topic, I asked 3 questions, and I chose 3 colors of a traffic signal to represent them. The first question, what, is in a red circle. I use red to remind me to stop and think. What are virtual field trips? And the second question, how, is shown in a green circle. This color can mean go. I want to look at ways we can optimize this resource in the classrooms. And the third question is why, and I placed that in a yellow circle. Yellow can mean to slow down or even to proceed with caution. And I wanted to take a minute and discuss why virtual field trips can be a good option to use in many of our classrooms. Under the red circle, I placed the first 2 squares. For the planned activity square, I chose a dark yellow because I like to write out my plans on yellow legal pads. Here the teacher is able to plan ahead and familiarize his or herself with what is offered in the different field trips. This way a teacher can be prepared to share the experience with the students. For the virtual tour box or square, I chose a cool blue. This color reminds me of a quiet museum. A virtual field trip is basically a multimedia enhanced tour of a variety of places. Next, I want to talk about what I placed under the yellow circle. On the left, under the yellow circle, asking why, is a square labeled cost effective. I used a copper-colored square because it reminded me of copper-colored pennies. And these virtual field trips are either free or very inexpensive. This makes them a good option for schools on tight budgets. The other square next to it is orange. This color reminded me of hazard lights. But these trips aren't hazardous. In fact, they are hazard-free. And that's another reason these trips are good options for schools. There are no worries of injury or harm to the students, and therefore there's less stress all around. Next, I want to talk about the square that I placed under the green circle in the middle. The green circle has 2 squares under it. The bright pink square is labeled Spark Interest. This color was chosen because it is a color that makes people take notice, which is what we want our students to do, to take notice, to take an interest in the lesson. Next to that is a light green square, and that is labeled Active Learning. This color reminds me of clover, and clover reminds me of being outside. When people are outside, they're usually more active, and this is what we want from our students. We want them to actively participate and not just to passively observe. The next 2 squares are black and tan. The black one is labeled Expert Resources, and it is black because I always think of experts wearing black suits. This type of resource is like having an expert tour guide that knows everything about everything you are seeing. The square next to it is tan colored, like sand in an hourglass. Every student on these field trips can explore and look around at their own pace, and there's never any danger of anyone getting left behind or lost. Next, I want to talk about what I've placed under the expert resources, and those are two more squares. A teal square that is labeled interactive, and a purple square that's labeled unique. The teal color reminds me of a social media and how people are able to interact with lots of other people, and they can do this all at the same time. We want to see this happen during the virtual field trips. We want students to have opportunities to interact with the resources on the site, as well as their classmates. The purple square is labeled unique, and that's next. I chose the rich purple color because it reminded me of exotic places. This feature, the uniqueness, is shown by the places you can experience using this tool that would not be accessible any other way. Next, I want to talk about what I placed under the interactive square. And that is a brown square, and it's labeled Ask Questions. Now, I used brown because it reminded me of dirt, and sometimes when you're learning, you get dirty. Asking questions is a great form of learning, and we definitely want to encourage and provoke questions. And we want to provoke questions or encourage questions before the activity, possibly during the activity, and certainly after the activity. Because if kids are asking questions, then they're thinking. And if they're thinking, they're learning. Under the purple square, I placed two more squares. The one on the left is dark green because green means living. There are some virtual trips that are live streaming video tours, and these are available and they can enable students to observe nature in action, and they're filmed in real time. Beside that square is a bright yellow square, and I have labeled it outer space. I chose this color because it reminds me of stars. There are tours that show you around our galaxy, and they can take you on a route of a satellite or individual planets or even stars. Very few of us will ever have the opportunity or be able to actually explore space in person, but being able to take a tour and see real pictures and videos of our solar system without leaving our room can be very exciting. Back near the top under the square labeled Active Learning, I have set a pair of squares. The white one labeled Goals is white because most goals are painted white in sports. We want students to see the goals you as the teacher have set in place for the lesson, and then reach them. Every lesson needs to have a purpose, and it needs to have a plan in order for the goals to be met. Next is a dark blue square, and it's labeled Group Activities. This is a great way to promote active learning by providing planned activities for small groups of students. I chose this color because it's a common color, and to me it brings a sense of togetherness. Next, I want to talk about the squares that I placed under group activities. I set a jewel-toned purple square, which I labeled Work Together, and this color is our school color, and it reminds me that teamwork is important. When students are able to work together on something, they can gain a broader sense of knowledge. Next to that is a bright blue square labeled Discussions. This promotes a sense of liveliness to me. And this is what you want from class discussions. You want a sense of liveliness, and you want lots of participation. Next, I want to talk about the two squares that I placed under discussions. One is a gray-blue square labeled Reflect. This color reminds me of water and how it reflects back the scenery around it. After the discussions, you can provide time for students to reflect on what they have learned through this process. And the last square under Reflect is a bright green square labeled Share. This color reminds me of candy and how I was taught to always share. Once a student has reached this point, the knowledge they have gathered needs to be shared with others. I believe this can be one of the best parts and help us to answer one of our first questions. How can we organize or optimize this resource in our classroom? As each student shares their own experience of the virtual field trip with others through speaking, pictures, or in whatever way they choose, the lesson has come full circle, and everyone who participated should have gained a deeper or at least a different insight of the experience. And now that knowledge is encoded and is theirs to keep. And that concludes my presentation, and I want to thank you for taking time to join me.